Welcome to Thread Hub. Let's get started with today's story. I had a one-night thing and I'd do it again, my wife said after 24 years of marriage. I replied, "My name is Daniel." I was 53 when my wife, Melissa, decided it was finally time to inform me that she had been unfaithful. For this charming little announcement, she chose one of the most expensive steakhouses downtown. At the time, I had no idea why she had suddenly suggested a romantic dinner on a Thursday night. Melissa hadn't arranged an evening for just the two of us in years. The second I sat across from her, though, I could tell something wasn't right. She kept glancing at her reflection in the window behind my shoulder, quietly smiling to herself while barely eating anything on her plate. "You seem nervous," I said. "I'm not nervous. You've adjusted your hair about 6 times since we sat down." She laughed. "Maybe I wanted to look good tonight." "You've certainly put more effort into tonight than you usually do." Her smile became a little stiff. The waiter arrived with our food, and for several minutes, we ate without saying a word. Then Melissa placed her fork beside her plate. "There's something I need to tell you." I leaned back in my chair. "Then tell me." She brought her hands together on the table and looked me straight in the eye. The whole thing felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror between hair adjustments. I had a one-night affair. I stayed silent. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Then she delivered the part she was obviously most pleased with. "And I'd do it again." There it was. The grand finale. The sentence she had been saving because she thought it would shatter me into tiny pieces right there between the mashed potatoes and the overpriced wine. I watched her for several seconds. "That's all?" I asked. Her smile disappeared. "What do you mean?" "I mean, that's the big revelation?" She blinked at me. "I just told you I cheated on you." "I heard you. You don't even look angry." I lifted my glass. "Were you expecting shouting?" She folded her arms. "Most husbands would shout. Most husbands probably haven't spent 6 months working out what their wives have been keeping from them." For the first time that evening, Melissa looked uneasy. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means I know much more than you think I do." The confidence drained out of her face. I stood, placed my napkin neatly on the table, and reached for my jacket. "Daniel, sit down." "No." "You're seriously just leaving?" I looked directly at her. "You said you'd do it again." "Maybe I'm furious. Or maybe you're about to learn that fury comes with consequences." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" I laughed. "No, Melissa." I slipped on my jacket. "I'm giving you a promise." Then I turned around and walked out of the restaurant. My phone started buzzing before I even made it to the parking lot. Melissa was calling. I ignored her. Because the truth was, her confession hadn't begun anything. It had finished something. And by the time she understood that, the wheels were already turning. I woke at 5:30 the next morning. Not because I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, miserable and heartbroken. I woke up because I had work to do. Melissa was still asleep when I got dressed and went downstairs. Throughout our 24 years of marriage, I had managed nearly all our financial matters: investments, insurance, household expenses, retirement accounts, the whole unglamorous circus. Melissa enjoyed spending money. I enjoyed knowing exactly where it went. That difference was about to become extremely important. At 7 o'clock, I was sitting inside the office of Ethan Caldwell, a divorce attorney I had already met with twice during the previous few months. He looked up from a file as I entered. "She finally admitted it?" "Last night." Ethan nodded. "Good. That makes things easier." "Not for her." A slight grin crossed his face. For the next hour, we reviewed every document. Bank records, property deeds, credit card statements, investment accounts. Everything was already sorted, labeled, and ready. I wasn't the kind of man who sat around waiting for trouble to get bored and leave on its own. By the time I walked out of Ethan's office, the legal process had already begun. At 10:30, my phone rang. Melissa. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. And again. By lunchtime, she had called 12 times. Eventually, a voicemail appeared. Her voice sounded nothing like the confident woman who had sat across from me in the restaurant. Daniel, my card was declined. Call me. I deleted the message. 5 minutes later, another voicemail arrived. Daniel, stop acting like a child. Deleted. Then came a third. The bank says there are limitations on the accounts. What did you do? Deleted. When I came home that evening, Melissa was sitting in the kitchen waiting for me. The smug little smile from the night before had apparently taken the day off. The moment I walked inside, she stood. What the hell is happening? I placed my keys on the counter. You'll need to narrow that down. The accounts. Why can't I access them? She stared at me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of water. Ethan submitted the documents this morning. Her expression went blank. What documents? Divorce papers. For one brief second, she looked honestly stunned. Then she laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the thin, nervous sound people make when reality has entered the room without knocking. You're serious? Entirely. You're divorcing me because of one night? I took a drink of water. Melissa, don't disrespect both of us by pretending I'm stupid. Silence filled the kitchen. What does that mean? She asked quietly. I met her eyes. It means I know it wasn't just one night. For the first time since our dinner, I saw genuine fear on her face. Not irritation. Not outrage. Fear. And that reaction confirmed nearly everything I needed to know. The tidy little version of the story she had prepared was already splitting apart at the seams. Melissa followed me into the living room. What do you mean, you know it wasn't one night? I lowered myself into my chair. I mean precisely what I said. You're assuming things. No. I opened my briefcase and removed a narrow folder. The instant she noticed it, something shifted in her expression. It was subtle, but it was there. Like a thief recognizing the security camera a few seconds too late. I dropped the folder onto the coffee table. Take a look. She stayed where she was. What's inside? Open it. Slowly, she picked up the folder. The first document was a receipt from a hotel. The next page held another. Then another. Different dates. The same hotel. The same category of room. The same city. Melissa raised her eyes to me. Daniel. Keep reading. She turned the page. Restaurant bills. Travel information. Photographs. Nothing explicit. Nothing obscene. Just enough. There were pictures of her walking into the hotel. 20 minutes later, the same man entered. Again and again, the same little routine. 8 months. 23 different meetings. The blood seemed to vanish from Melissa's face. You had someone follow me? No. Then how did you get all this? I leaned forward. You became careless. Silence. Who is he? I asked. She turned her eyes away. I'm not telling you. I nodded. His name is Marcus Whitmore. Her head whipped back toward me. Now I had her full attention. You know him? I know enough. In reality, I knew quite a bit. Marcus was a regional sales director for a company that did business with one of Melissa's friends. Married. 2 children. 47 years old. And evidently dumb enough to believe hotel doors also erased evidence. Melissa dropped heavily onto the couch. This isn't what you think. I nearly laughed. That sentence should come printed on hotel receipts. It wasn't serious. You met him 23 times. Things became complicated. No. Marriage is complicated. Secret hotel reservations are actually pretty straightforward. She pressed her fingers against her forehead. For the first time, she didn't look furious or smug. She just looked worn out. What do you want from me? She asked. The truth. I already told you the truth. No, Melissa. I rose from the chair. The truth would have been telling me this a year ago. Her eyes narrowed. A year? I nodded. You thought I only became suspicious 6 months ago? Her face went still. That was one more mistake. She had believed she was several steps ahead of me. She wasn't. I had suspected something for almost a year. The past 6 months had simply been about gathering proof. And there was still one detail she knew nothing about. The worst one. The thing I had uncovered 3 days earlier while searching through old files. Something so rotten it made her current affair look almost ordinary. I watched Melissa for a long moment. Then I picked up the folder. We're finished talking tonight. Daniel. No. The sharpness in my voice stopped her. You've lied enough. I walked upstairs. Behind me, Melissa said nothing. Because after that dinner, she was no longer asking herself what I knew. She was wondering what else I hadn't revealed. The next 3 days passed quietly. Far too quietly. Melissa stopped calling me every hour. She stopped shouting. Stopped trying to drag me into arguments. That silence concerned me more than her anger had. People become quiet when they're planning. Or when they're terrified. On Sunday afternoon, I returned from the gym and found her sitting by herself on the back patio. A cup of coffee rested untouched on the table. She looked as though she hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, she said. I pulled out the chair opposite her. Then talk. For several moments, she stared across the yard. Then she asked something I hadn't expected. How much do you know? Enough. She slowly shook her head. No. I don't think you do. That got my attention. I sat down. Then explain. Melissa lowered her gaze to her hands. 21 years ago, when I went to that conference in Denver. The moment she said Denver, my stomach tightened. Because Denver was exactly where the evidence had taken me. The old hotel records. The forgotten emails. The dates. Every trail ended in the same place. I remained silent. She swallowed hard. It happened once. I gave a short, humorless laugh. That's supposed to make it better? No. Her voice broke. I'm trying to finally tell you the truth. I leaned back in my chair. Then finish. Tears gathered in her eyes. Emma may not be your daughter. The words stayed suspended between us. But I wasn't shocked. Not anymore. 3 days earlier, I had opened an envelope from a private DNA laboratory. I had already read the results. Noah was biologically my son. Emma was not. I had spent 3 days deciding what that truth meant and what I would do with it. Melissa believed she had just dropped a bomb into my lap. What she didn't understand was that I had already stood inside the blast. I know, I said. Her head jerked upward. What? I know. Every trace of color left her face. You knew? The DNA results arrived last week. For several seconds, she couldn't form a word. Then she whispered, Daniel. No. I raised one hand. You're not getting comfort from me. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I was afraid. For 21 years? I didn't know what I was supposed to do. You tell the truth. She looked away. I thought I would lose everything. I stood. And instead? She said nothing. You lost it anyway. Please. I shook my head. You looked directly into my eyes for more than 2 decades. Her crying grew harder. You let me raise Emma. No. My voice turned cold. I raised Emma. I pointed toward my chest. I was there every single day. I turned and started toward the house. Daniel? Wait. I stopped walking. Without facing her, I said the only thing that finally shattered whatever composure she had left. No matter what happens after this, Emma is still my daughter. Then I went inside. Because Melissa's recent affair was no longer the worst lie in our marriage. It wasn't even in the same neighborhood. And now she understood that I had finally uncovered the whole miserable picture. The first person to come see me was Noah. It was Tuesday morning, and I was in my office going through reports when my assistant told me my son was waiting downstairs. The second Noah entered, I knew Melissa had already spoken to him. He shut the office door behind him. You doing okay? He asked. I'm still upright. Mom called me. I nodded. I assumed she would. Noah sat in the chair across from my desk. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he leaned forward. Is it true? Which part? His jaw tightened. All of it. I looked him directly in the eyes. Yes. The affair? Yes. The years of lying? Yes. The DNA test? Everything. Noah stared down at the floor and slowly breathed out. I can't believe she did this. Neither can I. He shook his head. No. His voice became harder. What I can't believe is that she looked Emma in the face for her entire life and never told her. That was the part that disturbed him most. Not the affair. Not the divorce. The lie underneath all the other lies. Does Emma know? He asked. Not yet. He nodded slowly. She has a right to know. I know. 3 days later, Emma called me herself. Her voice sounded unfamiliar. Quieter. Almost childlike. Can we meet? An hour later, we were sitting across from each other in a small coffee shop on the other side of town. She looked drained, as if sleep had become an optional luxury she could no longer afford. I knew immediately. Melissa had told her. Or at least told her enough to ruin her week. Emma stared down into her coffee. Then she finally asked, Did you really take a DNA test? Yes. She nodded. There was no outrage on her face. No dramatic shock. Only a tired kind of acceptance. After a moment, she looked up at me. Are you still my dad? That question hurt more than anything Melissa had said or done. I answered without hesitation. Nothing changes between us. Tears filled Emma's eyes. But biologically, I'm not. You are my daughter. She began to cry. Not loudly. There was no scene, no performance. Just quiet tears slipping down her face. I didn't know, she whispered. None of this is your fault. Mom said she was afraid. I leaned back in my chair. Maybe she was. Emma wiped beneath her eyes. Then she said something that surprised me. That still doesn't excuse what she did. For the first time that afternoon, I smiled. No. It doesn't. She reached across the table and took my hand. I'm not going to lose you. You're not. We stayed there for another hour. We didn't talk about Melissa. We didn't discuss laboratory results, hotel receipts, or the complete moral dumpster fire our family had recently inherited. We talked about Emma's job. Her plans. Life. Ordinary things. When we eventually stood to leave, she wrapped her arms tightly around me. "I love you, Dad." I held her close. "I love you too, kid." As I watched her car pull away, something became clear. Melissa had probably believed the truth would tear the family apart. Instead, it had done the opposite. The people who mattered weren't backing away from me. They were moving closer. And Melissa was beginning to understand that she was the one left standing by herself. Her life didn't fall apart all at once. It happened gradually. One piece at a time. And the cruelest part, at least from her point of view, was that nobody could stop it. Not even me. A week after Emma learned the truth, Ethan called. "I've got an update." I was sitting behind my desk. "Go ahead." Marcus Whitmore's wife found out. That made me sit a little straighter. "How?" Ethan laughed. Apparently, Melissa wasn't the only one treating common sense like an optional feature. "What happened?" "His wife filed for divorce 2 days ago." I nodded. "Good." The affair that had once seemed thrilling, private, and exciting was suddenly becoming costly. Extremely costly. Meanwhile, Melissa continued trying to claw back some control. She sent emails. She left voice messages. She even appeared at my office one afternoon. My assistant, Claire, stopped her in the reception area. When Claire called upstairs, I gave her one simple instruction. "Don't let her come up." Melissa finally left 20 minutes later. According to Claire, she did not leave gracefully. A few days afterward, Noah called me. "Did you hear what happened?" "No. Mom's friends have stopped speaking to her." I wasn't surprised. People love to talk, especially in towns where everyone pretends to mind their own business while knowing what their neighbor ordered for lunch. Apparently, Melissa had tried presenting herself as the victim. That version survived for roughly 3 days. Then the facts began leaking out. The affair. The years of deception. The truth about Emma's paternity. Calls stopped being returned. Invitations to dinner quietly vanished. Even some members of the family began keeping their distance. The biggest surprise arrived on a Friday afternoon. Ethan called again. "You're going to enjoy this one." "What happened now?" Marcus blocked Melissa. I nearly laughed. "You're serious?" "Completely." Apparently, the moment his own divorce became real, Marcus decided Melissa was no longer worth the inconvenience. The man she had gambled her entire life on simply disappeared. No emotional farewell. No passionate speech. No promises to build a future together. Just a blocked number in silence. Romance, apparently, becomes much less magical when attorneys start charging by the hour. That evening, Melissa called me. For the first time in weeks, I answered. She sounded exhausted. "Daniel." "What?" There was a long pause. Then she quietly asked, "Was any of this worth it?" I understood what she meant. The divorce. The legal bills. The damaged relationships. Everything that had followed. I looked through the window of my apartment. "No." Her voice cracked. For 1 second, I thought she might finally apologize. Instead, she whispered, "I never imagined this would happen." I nodded to myself. "That's exactly the problem, Melissa." "What is?" "You spent years believing consequences were things that happened to somebody else." Then I ended the call. There was nothing left for us to talk about. And in fewer than 3 weeks, we would be standing in court. The hearing took place on a freezing Tuesday morning. Melissa arrived with her attorney 15 minutes early. I arrived 5 minutes before the hearing was scheduled to begin. Ethan was already standing outside the courtroom. He handed me a folder. "You ready?" I'd been ready for months. He smiled. "That's the right answer." Inside the courtroom, Melissa looked nothing like the woman who had sat across from me at the steakhouse. The confidence was gone. The smug little smile was gone. Melissa looked exhausted. Older, too. As though the last several months had finally caught up with her all at once and sent her the bill. The judge entered, and the hearing began. Ethan got straight to the point. He presented everything. The financial statements. The hotel receipts. The travel records. The photographs. Then he introduced the messages exchanged between Melissa and Marcus. There was nothing graphic enough to turn the courtroom into cheap afternoon television. There didn't need to be. The messages were more than enough to establish what had happened. Melissa's attorney tried arguing that our marriage had already been experiencing difficulties. Ethan shut that argument down almost immediately. Problems within a marriage do not force someone to arrange 23 secret hotel meetings. The judge gave a small nod. Then we reached the most difficult part. The DNA results. The courtroom fell completely silent. Ethan placed the laboratory report in front of the judge. Melissa deliberately withheld significant information from her husband for more than 20 years. Melissa kept her eyes fixed on the table. The judge looked directly at her. Is the information in this report correct? Melissa's answer was barely audible. Yes. And during all those years, you never informed your husband? No. The judge nodded slowly. That answer seemed to carry more weight than almost anything else presented that morning. Not because Emma and I didn't share biology. Because Melissa had concealed the truth. For 21 years. Her attorney made one final attempt. He described Melissa as a woman who had made serious mistakes. A frightened woman. Someone who deserved compassion. The judge appeared unmoved. When the decision was announced, it was clear and final. The marriage was legally dissolved. Melissa would receive no spousal support. The assets were divided on terms favorable to me. She would also remain responsible for the debts she had accumulated personally. And then it was finished. 24 years of marriage reduced to a ruling, several signatures, and the quiet closing of a folder. Outside the courthouse, Ethan shook my hand. Clean victory. Thank you. You know what the interesting part is? What? He glanced toward the parking lot, where Melissa stood by herself. She lost this case long before she ever entered that courtroom. I looked in her direction. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She was the same woman who had sat across from me at that steakhouse. The same woman who had smiled and announced that she would cheat again. But the smile was gone now. So was the confidence. So was the illusion that she controlled what happened next. All that remained were the consequences. I turned away and kept walking. Because for the first time and longer than I could remember, there was absolutely nothing behind me worth looking at. 1 year after the divorce, I stood in the backyard of my new home with a pair of barbecue tongs in my hand. The old family house was gone. I had sold it several months after the divorce became final. I had originally purchased the property before Melissa and I were married. Legally, I could have kept it. Emotionally, I wanted nothing more to do with it. Every room held some old memory, and most of those memories had recently developed an unpleasant aftertaste. So I left. My new home wasn't impressive. It had 2 bedrooms, a respectable backyard, and neighbors who understood the beautiful concept of minding their own business. It was exactly what I needed. No tension. No performances. No carefully maintained lies sitting at the dinner table. Only peace. Noah was helping me assemble a fire pit. Emma was arranging drinks on the patio table. For the first time in years, life felt uncomplicated. "You're getting old," Noah said. I laughed. That's rich coming from the man who spent 20 minutes studying the assembly manual. That's called being intelligent. No. That's called being afraid of leftover screws. Emma rolled her eyes. You two sound exactly alike. All 3 of us laughed. And, strangely enough, Those little moments mattered more than I ever would have expected. A year earlier, I had believed my family was breaking apart. It hadn't. It had simply become smaller. And stronger. And honest. Later that evening, after we finished eating, Emma sat beside me on the patio. The sun was slowly dropping behind the trees. She picked up my phone and handed it to me. "You got a message." I glanced at the screen. Melissa. It was the first message she had sent in months. I stared at her name for a moment. The last I had heard, she was renting a small apartment alone and working at a dental office on the other side of town. Marcus Whitmore was long gone. So were most of the people she had once described as close friends. Eventually, I opened the message. It was brief. She said she hoped I was doing well. She missed the family. She wished everything had ended differently. That was it. No justification. No accusation. No request for another chance. Only regret, arriving about 21 years late and looking rather underdressed. Emma watched me. "Are you going to respond?" I considered it for a few seconds. Then I locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the table. "No." "Why?" I looked around the backyard. Noah was standing near the fire pit, laughing about something. Warm light spilled from the windows behind us. The yard was peaceful. My life was peaceful. Not because anyone was pretending. Because it genuinely was. Some conversations are useful only before the damage has already been done. Emma nodded. She understood. A few minutes later, everyone went inside. I remained alone on the patio for a moment. The cool air reminded me of that night at the steakhouse 1 year earlier. The night Melissa had looked across the table with that smug little smile. The night she told me she'd had a one-night affair. And that she would gladly do it again. Back then, she believed those words gave her power. Instead, they gave me clarity. She thought she was destroying my life. What she actually did was force me to see it clearly. And once I finally saw the truth, I refused to look away again. I stood, switched off the patio lights, and walked toward the house. My family was waiting inside. My future was waiting, too. And unlike the life I had left behind, neither of them was built on deception. Thank you for watching.